Today at the House of Hacks, we're going to talk about overcoming what you don't know. Let's get started. Hi makers, builders, and do-it-yourselfers, Harley here. Today I'm joined by my lovely wife, Diane, and again we're going to be talking about just kind of musing over some of the issues related to makers and things that are kind of a meta-level discussion, philosophical discussion about making things. And today we want to talk about making things in spite of having limited knowledge. So I see a lot of times online and forums and things where people are afraid of starting because they don't think they know enough about a particular topic. And I want to talk today about starting in spite of not necessarily knowing everything. You're never going to know everything about any particular topic. There's always going to be areas that you don't know. There's really three areas that we're talking about today. The area where you know what you know, the areas where you know what you don't know, and then the areas of what you don't know. And those can be a little intimidating and keep people from starting projects. I kind of think about it in terms of driving a car, right? If a car is moving, you can steer it. But if a car is stopped, you can't change directions. And when you're working on a project, if you're not moving forward on the project, there's no way to either make progress forward or change directions. Whereas if you are moving, even if you don't necessarily have all the information you need, when you are moving, you can change directions when you get more information and you do know what you need to know. What are some of the things that you've done, Diane, when you don't necessarily know everything you feel like you need to know for a particular project? How are some of the things that you accomplish things in spite of that?
Well, one of the things that I like to do is I like to play. For example, when I'm learning to watercolor, I would literally sit down and just play with the colors like a kid with finger paints, or just make a journal of what happens when you do this, what happens when you do that. With if you take this color and mix it this way with another color, what happens? And there are ways of doing that you can actually progressively learn how colors mix and why they mix. When you make mistakes on those, you can actually practice pulling the watercolor paints off. And all of this is done on scrap paper. When I was learning to do toll painting, I got paper that was shipping paper. So it was already expendable paper, and I would take just a paintbrush of water and I would practice the brush strokes with the water. And what I found was that oftentimes inspiration would come just by practicing those strokes. Oh, this looks like that. Oh, this looks like that. This brush stroke looks like an apple or something, and then I would just start trying to fill it in. But playing is a way of, you tell yourself nothing has to be perfect, just explore. And that actually emotionally frees you up to not be afraid of making mistakes, not be afraid of wasting materials and supplies.
Particularly when you use inexpensive supplies.
Right, exactly, like expendable wrapping paper.
Right, right.
But just play. So the other thing that I like to do is in my spare time is to actually watch instructional videos. One of my favorites for a long time was Bob Ross series.
Sure.
I watched that for years and years and years before actually attempting to paint. And once I did attempt to paint, it was like, oh yeah, that's why he said to do it this way, and that's why it was because when I actually did it, I could remember everything because I had watched him for so many years before I actually started, and it was like, oh, big, you know, light bulb going off on above my head type of thing. So,
Yeah,
that's just a couple of things.
So a couple of ways that I do it is I think there's research. I think they kind of mesh in with what you've said, but just kind of explained a little bit differently. There's research. So there's reading books. There's looking up articles on the web, things like this, where you're kind of seeking out advice from mentors, from people that have gone before, that are experts in the field, and educating yourself on the field. So there's the things you know, and there's the things you don't know. And you kind of ask questions about the things you don't know. You don't know, right? That's a known thing that you can formulate questions around, and ask people, whether it's one-on-one discussions or whether it's through watching a video and asking yourself questions, and then based on what's said in the video, derive the answers from them. Or reading books, you can do the same thing. And then as you learn more about what you don't know, and as that moves into the field of what you know, then you discover more areas where what used to be you didn't know what you didn't know now becomes things you don't know as you learn those new areas. And then you just kind of repeat the whole cycle, where you now formulate questions about those new things that you don't know, that previously were things you knew you didn't know, or you didn't know you didn't know. So it's just kind of, you gradually expand your awareness, your understanding, both in breadth and in depth, on those new topics as you move forward. And then the other thing too that I find valuable in the workshop is to make prototypes. And this is really the same concept, just kind of applied differently, that you were talking about expendable supplies, where I've made projects, or I had ideas for projects, and I used cardboard to make prototypes, and draw out a sketch of what I was thinking, cut it out, assemble it, and so I had a cardboard that I could kind of explore the shape and the design of the object. And then once I had something that I had a more familiarity with, I then could make it out of like scrap wood, and have something a little bit more rigid, a little bit more well-defined than the cardboard, but still not the final product. And then once I had that, I'd have a much better understanding of what I was working with, that I could move into either the metal or the more high-quality wood, more expensive wood for the final project. And so it's just kind of a progression. And like you said, when you're at the earlier prototyping stages, you're not afraid to make mistakes because it's cheap, it's inexpensive, and you just move forward.
And a lot of people, they tend to learn differently. So some people can do the research because they learn by reading. Other people learn by hands-on doing. Kinesthetic people do that. Other people learn simply by watching other people. And so it's really important that if we don't know something, if we don't know what we don't know, then the best way to go about getting rid of that knowledge gap is to understand how you learn, and to attempt to enjoy the process of learning rather than to be afraid of it, because none of us are perfect.
Right.
None of us are God. None of us are so great that we know everything.
Right.
And so if we just come into the understanding that that's okay, that's who we are, all of a sudden mistakes are very valuable, in that if we embrace them, we can improve our knowledge base using them, and actually putting our mistakes to work for us.
There's a quote that I remember hearing. I'm not sure I'm going to get it exactly right because it's just kind of coming to me as you're talking, but it's something about, in science, some of the most brilliant strokes of new knowledge have come about when you look at something and go, that's strange. An experiment didn't go the way you wanted, and it goes in a completely different direction, and now all of a sudden you're exploring an area that you didn't know existed before.
Right, and those are the aha moments.
Right.
Those are the why did that happen moment, and it's okay to be curious. Because curiosity, even though it may have killed the cat, it's not going to kill you.
That's awesome.
You know?
Yep. And I think that's a great note to end on. Curiosity may have killed the cat, but it won't kill you. So thanks for joining us on our creative journey. If you're stuck at some point on your journey, well, just move past that. Keep going, moving forward, explore the areas that you don't know, and continue on your journey. Until next time, go make something. Perfection's not required, fun is.